We're not conspiracy theorists to say the enemy is all around us. The enemy has infiltrated our governments, our churches. It has infiltrated our workplaces, and in many cases, our families. One of the tricks of the enemy, though, is to do something such as name calling. And thus, that's why the term conspiracy theorist came up. So you're not crazy to look at what are some of the subtle ways that they do what they do. And one thing I say I'm proud of is that, or not proud of, I'm just glad that my PhD is in communication. Because you've probably heard before, he who owns the language owns the message. And the more I look at the world around me and how Satan has used that, I'm like 100% certain, absolutely. We learned from back in the 70s. The pro-abortion movement was calling it abortion, and so many people, I can't remember the numbers, I'd be lying, it was like 20, 30%, maybe less than 20, agreed with abortion. So they went in, and it was approximately right in 1973, right before Roe v. Wade, and they changed the wording to choice. Now, we in America are a nation of second sons. And you're probably thinking, what does that mean? Well, I loved it when I discovered it. But in Europe, they had all the firstborn sons would inherit the land. So the secondborns were kind of like left over, I think. Prince Harry in his recent book called Spare, I'm not going to get the throne. I'm just a spare wheel in case something happens to, in that time was his brother. But now, even if something happened to his brother, it would go on to William's son. So these second sons are like, dang, I'm screwed. I got no way of getting ahead. So America, when the land was found and when people came to America, it was the second sons going, I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to go there and I can create my own destiny. So taking it back to that original comment, the word choice was something that a nation of second sons whose lives and livelihoods and everything they think about is on independence. I'm not going to succeed because I'm born first. I'm going to succeed because I work harder. I'm going to have a choice, and no one's going to stop me from that choice. So you see how that worked. Like, yeah, I don't believe in abortion, but I do think people should have a choice until you dig down. And actually, believe it or not, this whole video is not even about abortion, but it's an example. So when you dig deep down and you tell people to have to fight with, well, what are your thoughts? You want them to have the choice to do what? And ultimately, it's like kill their child. So I've seen people, when you can really listen to the language and get people to discuss their own wording, they might go, yeah, okay, well, maybe I'm not for that. Some of the other ways that language it has been twisted. I recently heard a podcast where a very famous, worldwide famous daughter was arguing, my dad didn't have an addiction. My dad had a dependency on drugs. And it was actually the podcaster was going, what's the difference? She didn't say that to her face because she wanted to be gentle, but she later, actually, she did say it, but in a nice way. Well, what's the difference between dependency and addiction? And so I'll just say it was Candace Owens, and she did a new show and she put it on the screen. So I looked it up. Dependency says that the body can't live without it. Addiction means, I don't know, I can't remember what it said, but basically made addiction sounds like, oh, that's only if you're like on crack or marijuana or some, one of those drugs. But a dependency, because at least 5% of the people in the nation have a dependency on some pharmaceutical. They're not addicts. They just are dependent on it. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, I thought that was the way it was. And I'm saying, check the language. Understand what is the difference. You're dependent, or this person's dependent on a pharmaceutical drug, just like the addict is dependent on the crack. I'm not here to argue that topic, just like I'm not here to argue abortion. But it's the language. One word is made to soften, and the other word speaks more of a reality. Other words that we've been fed were gender versus sex. Gender as a word didn't come out until approximately the last 100-ish, 150 years. Gender and sex were never separated. They were the same. What has it meant? Now, I received textbooks at the university that I was teaching at, and I was supposed to teach the difference, meaning gender was much more about the feminine qualities I felt or the masculine qualities that I felt. So as you see, it's making a little bit more about feelings, and it started, again, 100 some years ago. So you could be a biological sex, and they were attaching that to biology, but gender, that's more fluid. Satan was trying to get into our minds by twisting the language. Another word and even think too, you're not even allowed to say transsexuals now or transvestites. Transsexual means that's my sex, but no, you can't change your sex. You can change your gender, or your gender doesn't match your sex. He who owns the language controls the message. Transvestite. That's not allowed anymore because it used to be vesting. You're vesting your clothing. I'm a man who dresses as a woman, or I'm a woman who dresses as a man. But we don't want that word. We just want to be able to say transgenders because it's soft and the society might be more likely to accept that. I thought of another one today when I was coming back from church, calling humans animals. Now, again, you might be thinking, we are animals. No, we're not. Humans and animals are both mammals, but there's the human mammal and the animal mammal. And why is that distinction important? Because in Genesis, God created the animals, and then he created man. And he said they were different. And the one that was man was one that was very pleased. This one was very good. The animals were good. The humans were very good. They were different species of mammals. But God never called human beings animals. Going back to the abortion argument, one of the things that people like to do is make sure you don't say baby, you say fetus. But if you go back to the language, from the day you were conceived in your mother's womb, you were either female or male. So you're a different state of femaleness. You're an embryo female. You're a zygote female. You're a fetus female. You're a baby female. You're a toddler female. You're a girl female. You're a teenaged female. You're a woman female. So you can change what some of those words have to do with size, your level of development. So what is this all about? I bring all this up because as I was doing my book, The Super Couple, and for those of you that don't know, I got my PhD in marriage, and I save marriages for a living, God through me. And I did a whole chapter in my book, The Super Couple, A Formula for Extreme Happiness in Marriage, on the word love. And it showed how love as a word changed its definition with time. It's a very intriguing chapter to me because what I did when I wrote that book, because I thought, what is love? And I went to the library and I had on my desk a stack of the dictionaries, every dictionary English that was written. I went back to the oldest English dictionary. It was like 1762. I wrote the book 6 years ago, so I don't remember the year. And I looked at each of those dictionaries and how they defined love. Remember the words. Who gave a word a definition but another person? Another person's like, yeah, I'm going to call it that. Or, and then population just has to agree with it or not. And if a large number of population use a word, it takes that meaning. But it can change. Just like cool. I'm not cool right now. I'm actually kind of warm. But cool means hey. Or bruh. We hear bruh today, brother. Well, you're not my biological brother. You might be my brother in Christ. You might be my BFF or best friend. I know you get the point. So when I looked at the word love, I watched how the word love changed from the very first dictionary, it was something more spiritual, something action-oriented, and something that turned towards God. It was something like having a greater good for another human being, something like that. I should have brought my book out. Go buy it. It's a fantastic book. And then it changed to where it was, instead of being action oriented, like love is something that you do. Love is what? Patient, kind. Love is not rude. Then it changed to something more feeling focused. Then it changed to something more romantic feeling focused. Then at one point, there was a dictionary that went very lustful. It would go from being a noun to being a verb, actually from being a verb to being a noun. And it was funny, after World War I or II, I saw the dictionary reincorporated God in some of its definitions. Why? Because if we control the language, we can control your thoughts. My own thoughts have been controlled by these. When I talk gender, I'll say that now. And I'm trying to re-control my own language, because I don't want to be afraid of saying flip chart, because it offends a Filipino who is pejoratively called a flip. I'm not calling you anything pejorative, but this is a flip chart. The paper flips over. So one of the things I suggest for you to do, and I have done this myself, is you can't look up every word, but when you start seeing definitions of, oh, this is a definition of hate, go to your dictionaries. My mother-in-law gave me a fantastic encyclopedia set, which in essence does have definitions of things. But get the old encyclopedias, get the old definitions, the old dictionaries, the oldest you can find, and keep that. And when language changes, don't let culture around you try to get you to think you're old or whatever. You hold up your dictionary and say, here's the definition. Hate does not mean disagreeing with people. Hate is associated with these actions of anger and harm and hate in your heart. Don't let the bad guys control you. Don't let them tell you how to speak, and do not fear speaking truth. Take back your language, and people will judge you. If you're not being judged or persecuted, you're not being a good Christian. You've got to be persecuted for something, because if you're not persecuted, it means you're probably not stepping out fearlessly. If we are fearful and we kind of hold back our truth, what is God going to say? Is he going to say you didn't speak when you should have spoken because you're afraid you used the wrong word? Speak truth and give the consequences to God, good or bad. Because then all you have to do is answer to God. I said what I said. And this can be verified in the Bible, where it says, let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Don't water it down. Don't pussyfoot around it. Say yes, take the consequences, or say no and take the consequences. But don't let them, whoever they are, control your language. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks for listening to this informational Bacon Bit. And as always, remember to live your life sunny side up. Take that language, SONNY, SUNNY. I'll take both sunny sides up.